We'd like to welcome you to our first Bible Talk broadcast. Bible Talk is intended to be an online Bible discussion, and so uh, we hope that you'll join in and make some comments as we discuss our topic for this evening. If you're new to Skype for Business, I may just point out a couple of things that you may want to do. In your screen, if you've logged in just for the first time, it probably looks something like this. If you click up in the very top right, little icon up there, and choose Presentation View, it will increase the view of the slides that will be showing this evening. And also, if you click in the lower left, the icon there, it will open up a chat room where you can type your questions or any comments that you might have. And so doing those two things, your screen should look something like this at this particular point. So you should have a larger view of the slides as well as being able then to type in the chat box. Normally we would have Brother Jeff Asher be joining us to do most of the speaking on Bible Talk. He had some other last minute things that came up, and so you've got me tonight. My name's Ron Milliner. I'll usually be joining Jeff and providing kind of the technical support, moving some of the slides and keeping things going, but tonight I'm going to be trying to do it both, and so ask that you'll be patient if you're making some comments and I might accidentally overlook them. Jeff, his website is www.bibletalk.net. That's where you'll find the link to the Bible Talk program each Thursday evening, as well as a number of other things that Brother Jeff has posted on that particular website. This Sunday, I plan to be speaking at the West End Church of Christ in Richmond, Virginia, and their website is www.westendchurchofchrist.org. So we encourage you to come out this Sunday and join us if you have that opportunity in the Richmond, Virginia area. Normally we work and worship with the Stafford Church up north of Fredericksburg, Virginia. But as I have the opportunity, I do some preaching, and so I'll be kind of helping the West End congregation out this coming Sunday morning. Both congregations meet at 10 o'clock for Bible study and 11 o'clock for worship. So again, if you have the opportunity, you're in the Richmond area, hope you can stop in and visit with those good brethren there. This evening we want to talk about our topic for the evening will be marriage in the crosshairs. It seems like a lot of things are being said about marriage in this day and time, and so we want to take a look and see what the Bible has to say about that and talk a little bit about it this evening. We'll start out in Matthew chapter 19 and beginning with verse 3. It says some Pharisees approached him, that is, approached Jesus, to test him. They asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife on any grounds?" Jesus said, "Haven't you read that he who created them in the beginning made them male and female?" And he also said, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they're no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, man must not separate." Now go back and notice in verse 4 again, he says, "Haven't you read that he who created them in the beginning made them male and female?" And so in this particular passage, we go back to the beginning, the very beginning of creation, and we find that God did in Genesis, the early chapters of Genesis, we read about the creation of Adam and Eve. And in that creation act, we do not read about Adam and Eve being created along with Susan, Betty, and Jill. And yet, in our day and age, one of the things that seems like marriage is being attacked is that there's some who want to practice polygamy. In fact, this particular article from Time magazine in 2012, entitled "I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do," made the connection with polygamy with the current discussion regarding gay marriage. It said growing public support for gay marriage has nonetheless gladdened the hearts of polygamists. You can't talk about gay marriage and still criminalize us for who we love and how we organize our families. Indeed, that article also talked about the fact that that particular year was a presidential election, and it said, how fringe can a cultural practice be, after all, when it's part of the family history of both of this year's presidential candidates? As you remember, Mitt Romney was running. Of course, the Mormon background, accepted polygamy for many years. And Barack Obama, who was running with the Muslim background of his ancestors, who also were involved in practicing polygamy. Newsweek wanted to have apparently their say regarding this, and so in the article it says, in the Bible, traditional marriage doesn't exist. Abraham fathers children with Sarah and his servant Hagar. Jacob marries Rachel and his sister Leah, as well as their servants Bilhah and Zilpah. And Jesus was celibate, as was Paul. And so even trying to make a reference there to the scriptures regarding the idea that you can have different types of marriages. Paul does remind us in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 that concerning the things of which you wrote, it is good for a man not to marry. Paul says, but because of fornication, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. And so again, this is God's intention from the beginning, as Jesus reminded us back there in Matthew chapter 19. And so we're reminded that again, in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. He didn't create Adam and Eve, Susan, Betty, and Jill. And he did not create Adam and Steve. In spite of a lot of the discussions going on in our current day and age, back in 2014, the Supreme Court at that time had a ruling that basically made it same-sex marriage legal in about 30 of the states in this country, which of course would be a majority. This particular article, Associated Press release, said that a majority of U.S. states, it means that as many as 60% of Americans will be living in states that have legalized the practice. And of course, even now, we're waiting to hear the Supreme Court's decisions to be made that could very well make same-sex marriage legal in all the states. We're told that there's a high number of young people who accept same-sex marriage. This article says about 58% of Americans now support gay marriage, and 81% of those under 30 do. And so, according to, again, the polls, there's a lot of individuals who are saying that they should be accepted. Of course, the president came out a few years ago, apparently with a change of mind. He said, at a certain point, I've just concluded that for me personally, it's important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be allowed to get married. We see a lot of it being advocated in TV shows. Studies have shown that gay characters on TV in the 2000s measurably decreased viewers' negative feelings toward gays. So again, the TV shows and the movies and so forth can have an influence upon us, and they do indeed have an influence upon us. And so this is another attack upon marriage, as there are some who are advocating against same-sex marriages. But we go back in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. He didn't create Adam and Eve, Susan, Betty, and Jill. He didn't create Adam and Steve. And he didn't create Adam and Fido. We do go back in the Garden of Eden there and find that Adam was given the task of naming the animals. It says the man gave names to all the livestock, to the birds of the sky, to every wild animal, but for the man no helper was found who was like him. There wasn't a creature among the animal kingdom that was to be suitable for meeting Adam's needs. Yet because of evolution, bestiality would be just kind of a natural thing according to that particular view. In fact, we're told that the date of our last common maternal ancestor could have been 3 times older than that of our last common paternal ancestor. And so, in other words, the ancestor on the woman's side was a lot older than that on the father's side. And so apparently that female would have been mating with some type of ape-like creature for no doubt thousands of years, according to evolution. And so it just would be again, kind of a part of nature, according to this. We have had already have had the first official state-recognized marriage between a human and his pet, in this case a dog, and you probably have already guessed it, it was in California. The article says on Monday, history was made at the Chapel of Our Lady, this again in San Francisco. The article says, as the first ever state-recognized human-animal marriage took place. And so, again, if you're going to redefine marriage, if you're going to have it where you can have 2 men or 2 women getting married, or if you can have one man having 3 or 4 different wives, why can't you have an individual marrying his pet or his dog? In fact, I think it was a few years ago, back in 2010, the magazine Mother Jones actually published a map that showed the states that were friendly to those who practice the evil of bestiality. God expressed his view regarding this particular sin in Leviticus, the 18th chapter, and verse 23, when he says, "You're not to have sexual intercourse with any animal, defiling yourself with it. A woman is not to present herself to an animal to mate with it. It is a perversion." And so that's how God looks upon this particular sin. So again, God created Adam and Eve. He didn't create Adam and Eve, Susan, Betty, and Jill. He didn't create Adam and Steve. He didn't create Adam and Fido. And he didn't create Adam and little Johnny. And the perversion and the attacks against marriage continue as this idea of pedophilia is suggested again as something that's just a natural sexual orientation. In the Guardian, it says there's a growing conviction that pedophilia should probably be classified as a distinct sexual orientation, like heterosexuality or homosexuality. The Harvard Mental Health Letter of July 2010 stated that pedophilia is a sexual orientation and therefore unlikely to change. The article went on to talk about that the reclassification of pedophilia as a sexual orientation would, however, play into what Gould calls the sexual liberation discourse, which has existed since the 1970s. She says there's a lot of people who say we outlawed homosexuality and we were wrong. Perhaps we're wrong about pedophilia as well. So here's again an attack against marriage as God has defined it, as society has known for it to be for thousands of years. The idea that, again, man engaging in intercourse with a child. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and beginning verse 9, Apostle Paul writes and says, don't you know that evil people won't have a share in the blessings of God's kingdom? Don't fool yourself. No one who's immoral or worships idol or is unfaithful in marriage or is a pervert or behaves like a homosexual will share in God's kingdom. Neither will any thief or greedy person or drunkard or anyone who curses and cheats others. You hear a lot of people saying, well, that's just part of their nature. They can't change. And yet we continue reading in the next verse of this particular chapter, and it says, some of you used to be like that. But now the name of our Lord Jesus Christ and the power of God's Spirit have washed you and made you holy and acceptable to God. And so we're reminded again that God in the beginning, going back to that original intent that Jesus pointed us to in Matthew 19, that God created Adam and Eve. He did not create Adam and Eve, Susan, Betty, and Jill. He did not create Adam and Steve. He did not create Adam and Fido. He did not create Adam and little Johnny. And we can add that he did not create Adam and Eve and a club. And again, because of evolution, there are those who seem to think that rape is just a natural thing. Of course, we're all familiar with the idea that Darwin's idea of what some have referred to as being the survival of the fittest. In another article in Discover, it says it might be too strong to claim that evolution has wired us for sin, but excessive indulgence in lust or greed could certainly put you ahead of your competitors. And so looking at things from an evolutionary standpoint, we have an article that was written by two individuals that appeared in the Sciences and says, as bizarre as some of those facts may seem, they all make sense when rape is viewed as a natural biological phenomenon that is a product of the human evolutionary heritage. We fervently believe that just as the leopard's spots and the giraffe's elongated neck are the results of eons of past Darwinian selection, so also is rape. If evolution is true, is rape just again a part of nature, our current makeup? These two men were not the only two that apparently had that idea. We find two others who had a book published in which they talk about among orangutans, rape accounts for 1/3 to 1/2 of more of all copulations. Even among chimpanzees, where rape is a good deal rare, it probably still happens as often as among many human populations. So comparing us again with the orangutans and the chimpanzees and saying that rape and battering and the killing of infants, that these types of male violence are just, just part of nature, part of an evolutionary background. Once again, Thornhill and Palmer in their book, A Natural History of Rape, talk about the cause of human rape lie in the different adaptations of male and female sexuality that were formed by selection in human evolutionary history. It's just part of evolution, folks. But I think when we read of the case of rape in 2 Samuel chapter 13, when Amnon raped his sister, Tamar, said, "Come sleep with me, my sister." She said, "Don't, my brother. Don't humiliate me, for such a thing should never be done in Israel. Don't do this horrible thing. Where could I ever go with my disgrace? And you be like one of the immoral men in Israel. Please speak to the king, for he won't keep me from you." But he refused to listen to her, and because he was stronger than she was, he raped her. Well, could Amnon blame, his evolutionary background for this action? Apparently, according to some today, he would be justified in that. Time magazine has had covers that ask the question, who needs a husband? Who needs marriage? Indeed, there seems to be a growing idea that marriage is on the out. In fact, Pacific Standard magazine stated that marriage is rumored to have passed away quietly in 2011. It has been widely reported that the institution died of complications from a progressive disease. The causes include growing equality in the workforce, social acceptance of licenseless sex, and the dissolving of the stigma of being either single or gay. Today, there are more single than married people in the nation. Other studies, again, point out this same fact of the decline. The study says that in 1960, 2/3 of all 20-somethings were married. That was 1960. In 2008, just 26% were. About half of all the adults in this country were married in 2008. Back in 1960, 7 in 10 were. And 39% apparently think that marriage indeed is becoming obsolete. With people giving up on marriage, apparently there's, of course, a lot of fornication going on. This report continued by saying, as marriage has declined, cohabitation or living together as unmarried partners has become more widespread, nearly doubling since 1990. The share of births to unmarried women has risen dramatically over the past half century from 5% in 1960 to 41% in 2008. And yet another report says that after decades of declining marriage rates and changes in family structure, the share of American adults who have never been married is at a historical high. In 2012, 1 in 5 adults aged 25 and older had never been married. In 1960, only about 1 in 10 adults in that age range had never been married. And so we see how that marriage is failing to become a part of the basis, of the foundation of our society. We've seen how that some of these acts go back and have some connection with evolution. Darwin, in his book that is not quite as familiar as his Origin of Species, but his book, The Descent of Man, had this to say: men and women, like many of the lower animals, might formerly have entered into strict, though temporary, unions for each birth, talking about the birth of their offspring. As far as sexual selection is concerned, all that is required is that choice should be exerted before the parents unite, and it signifies little whether the unions last for life or for a season. This seems to be our view, our society's view of marriage. It doesn't matter. It can only be for a season. Apparently for some, it doesn't even need to exist. They're going to go their own way and do what they want to do. Thomas Jefferson, in a letter that he wrote to an individual back in 1818, talked about the work that he and others were doing in regard to laws that they were making in Virginia. And in that letter, he said, early in our revolution, the legislature of Virginia thought it necessary that their code of laws should be revised. This task was committed to Mr. Wythe, Mr. Pendleton, and myself, among others. The law regulating marriage came under consideration. We thought it most orthodox and correct to copy into our bill the very words of the Levitical law. They felt a need to copy the words of the Bible into the law to protect marriage. Possible our society has reached a point where we need to put into our statutes the very words of Jesus when he said, haven't you read that he who created them in the beginning made them male and female. And he also said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. We hope that you'll be able to join us next Thursday at, again, 7:30. Hopefully Brother Asher will be back, and we have the opportunity to, again, talk about some Bible topic. And we encourage you to tell your friends and have them join us. They can join in the chat room and, again, make any comments or questions that you might have. If you're interested in some of this material, some of the quotes and things like that, there is a book on Amazon, an ebook with the same title, Marriage in the Crosshairs, and again has a lot of the information that we talked about tonight. You can order that, and then it's a shareable book, so you can share it with your friends and neighbors. So we thank you for joining us tonight, and again hope to be with you next week at the same time.